Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're looking at The Last Days of the Dinosaurs, an asteroid extinction and the beginning of our world by Riley Black. Riley Black is a science writer who mostly writes about dinosaurs. She also does children's books too, which is really cool. Anyone who's trying to get children more interested in science is doing something pretty important. I had some mixed feelings about this book because this book is some very different things, which we'll get into in a minute. The layout of this book was one of my favorite parts about it. We start out before the asteroid impact, and each chapter is about life during different time periods after the impact. Chapter 3 is the first hour, Chapter 4 is the first day, all the way up to Chapter 10, 1 million years after the impact, and then a conclusion chapter. The author will focus on one or two different animals for each chapter, and that was another really cool thing about this book. Some of the other books I've read cover such large spans of time that they can't spend a lot of time on each period. With this book, it's not like that. The author goes into a lot of detail with each scenario and each different animal. For example, a biology book might mention that a frog can breathe through its skin, but in this book, we spend several pages painting a picture of how a frog could try to avoid a hostile atmosphere by burrowing into the mud and going into a kind of torpor or mini hibernation, but they have to leave some of their skin exposed, otherwise they wouldn't be able to breathe. Things like that were pretty interesting to hear about in such detail. It was a nice change from some of the books I've gotten used to reading. And this is a science book, but it also plays out like a narrative, sort of like some of the descriptive parts in The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs by Steve Brusati. This book is also a bit of a pleasant kind of Trojan horse. It's a dinosaur book, yes, but once we really get going, it really turns into a book about none other than evolution. Yeah, all biology books are technically about evolution, but this one almost felt like reading something by Richard Dawkins at some points, but is written more in the style of like a David Attenborough show, like Planet Earth. A lot of times while reading this, I couldn't help but reading it in David Attenborough's voice. It really felt like Riley could write for some of his shows. But yeah, the author spends quite a bit of time on evolution and things like the evolution of teeth and gizzards, bird wings and bird beaks. And this book is written to be very accessible. It's much more casual than some of the more academic science books that we might be used to. Almost like if your friend was explaining dinosaur extinction to you, like that kind of casual. Actually, that's another thing I really liked. This book isn't just about dinosaurs. It's about many of the animals and plants that were living and dying in these times. It's the last days of the dinosaurs, yes, but that does include a lot of other things besides dinosaurs, like mammals, like us. Oh, and this book gave me such a great idea for a book. A book about all the major extinctions as experienced by whatever animals would be the progenitors of what would one day be Homo sapiens, our relatives, all the way back to the Ordovician, before there even were mammals. And of course, we wouldn't know what each of these creatures would be, so we would have to take some creative license. But that's a book I would love to read. If that book ever happens, you heard it here first. Back to The Last Days of the Dinosaurs. This is a book about the end Cretaceous extinction specifically and evolution. Evolution concepts, particularly as they deal with extinction, like differential survival prospects for generalists versus specialists, or ecological niches, and most importantly, the relationship between life and the changing environments between all these different time periods and how they affect each other. That's an important part of it. It focused on that and what it was like to live in these places and times for these creatures. And much like the last book I read, it's about how all these changes brought about by this extinction opened up the way for so much more novel diversification of life. So many things appeared for the first time around the Cretaceous and were either stopped by the asteroid or shaped by its effects. Stuff like this is what made this book good. I did say I had some mixed feelings about this book, and what I meant by that was concerning the last chapter. This book kind of changes toward the end. If you ever read Cy Montgomery's Soul of an Octopus, it was a lot like that. The author decided to take this opportunity to get very open with some very deep and personal things, talking about her passionate love for dinosaurs, as well as how she experienced major changes in her life and how this is a big part of her, very much like what we saw in Soul of an Octopus. Riley Black really channeled her inner Cy Montgomery for this last chapter. My take is, that's great that you're able to use your writing career as an outlet, and I hope everything goes well for you, but frankly, this is not what I crack science books for, and not to sound insensitive, but I really just don't care. Reading time is extremely precious, and I want to spend that time learning. It was really only the last chapter that was like this, so you do get some pretty good stuff by the time you get to this point. I thought the book would end by talking about how we really need to be thinking about the extinctions that are taking place today, but the author really just pulls a 180 out of nowhere instead. You know, most of the things that have ever lived are gone now, but everything that's alive today came from something back then, and I think a lot about the ancient proto-hominids like Australopithecus and Homo habilis and Homo heidelbergensis. I'm always keeping an eye out for new books in that area, but I do enjoy a good dinosaur book too. Out of all the dinosaur or / extinction books I've reviewed on this channel, this one wasn't my favorite, but it was still good. But it just had a couple of factors I wasn't crazy about. But these were things that I think most people would like more, like the very casual style and all the personal stuff near the end. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's always fun to read about ancient extinct creatures and life in general. If you're interested in dinosaurs or extinction and would like to read more about what life was like after the end Cretaceous extinction, check out The Last Days of the Dinosaurs by Riley Black.